everybody, and welcome back to OTT Executive Podcast. My name is Brian Mahoney. I'm your host, and I'm joined today by Ren Young. Welcome, Ren.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me.
And Ren, you're the CEO and founder of PRAYZN. Is that correct?
Yes, I am. Proud to be.
Okay, just very cool. Welcome. I'm thrilled to have you here just before Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody in our audience. For those that celebrate that holiday, we're thrilled to have you join us here on this somewhat rainy fall day in the Boston area. And Ren, you're out in LA, correct?
Yes, in Los Angeles, actually in the Burbank area.
Okay, perfect. That's great. So, just real quick, what is PRAYZN?
So PRAYZN is the first OTT platform for the faith-driven music and entertainment market. We're basically we're flipping a few tables in faith-driven entertainment industry, and we're powered by Christian pop music.
Okay, great. We're going to get into much more detail about that in a little while. It's very exciting, and I have been doing some research before this podcast about this segment of the industry. But first, a little bit about yourself, Ren, your background, and how you got to the point where you are today.
I can give you a very quick thesis statement on who I am. I'm a summer camp kid. My background is in music. I was a Suzuki violinist as a kid. Then I went to clarinet. Then I went to college for classical composition and voice. My entire life has been about music. I always say my soundtrack literally goes from Beethoven and Bach to Beyonce and Bad Bunny. And everything
I
in
love it.
between.
So hold on, I gotta pause you right there. This is hilarious. So I did Suzuki violin as a kid, right?
Oh,
Which,
really?
yeah, there was myself, my cousins. There was like six or seven of us. We were terrible, and I think the whole idea was it was so parents could feel good that their kid can play an instrument without really knowing how to read music or anything.
Yes.
So I did that, and you know what my next instrument was? A clarinet, and I was
Way.
terrible at that too. I remember Mr. Chickadee was my clarinet teacher, and he used to put a number two pencil in my on my lips to show me how to hold the reed properly in my mouth. It was a bad experience. So sorry, I just had to interject there. That's hilarious.
Oh,
Parallel
I
lives,
love it. I love it. I love it. I love
but
the
not opera. And Bugs Bunny. I learned opera from Bugs Bunny.
oh, that's great. Kill the wabbit. I love it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that's where everything started for me. And then I went to conservatory for music. Actually, I studied with Marlena Malis, who is a very prolific, was a very prolific, she passed away last year,
Mhm.
music teacher. So everybody from Pavarotti to Susan Graham and Renee Fleming all went through her studio. And I studied with her at the Curtis Institute of Music. It kind of solidified for me. It was the early journey of story for me. It's where I really learned how to communicate effectively to an audience. And that kind of, fast forwarded to the crazy accidental, I would call it, the accidental birth of my entertainment industry
And
career.
there's always an inflection point. I love hearing this part of the story because there's always a bit of happenstance to your good fortune, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, totally. It's a story that I love telling, how I got into the entertainment industry from music, because people are always so fascinated by that. And it's so for me, I had just finished my graduate degree. I was at an opera festival in Logan, Utah. We just wrapped. And I drove out to visit my older brother who lives in California, and he worked for an audience company, the seat fillers, the one that
Yep.
puts butts in seats and does all the clapping and stuff at the talk shows and the game shows. And I was hanging out as a PA and cracking jokes by the craft services table, and they lost a contestant. And they heard me cracking the jokes, one of the EPs. And before you know it, I was going through casting. I was on the show. I won the game show, and I was bitten right there. Live.
No way. That's hilarious. Wow. That's impressive, right?
It was called Russian roulette. I probably should tell you that.
Very cool. So then your career, you got your
So
start in the entertainment business, and then where did you go from there?
yeah, I knew that I wanted to do this. Like just looking around and watching how everything flowed, it just gave me joy. And there was this sense of urgency that this was something that I wanted to do. I wanted that pivot was for me. And so I just started figuring it out. And in my head, the first thing I needed to do in order to become a producer, I should be an agent. And in order to be an agent, you got to be an agent's assistant. So my first job was as I was in the mailroom at ICM.
Hmm.
And that
Well, you
last
this is like a Hollywood script. You worked your way up from a mailroom, right?
I literally worked my way up from the mailroom, and then from the mailroom. But I discovered very quickly that the assistant desk life wasn't for me.
Okay.
And so, funny enough, when I went onto a desk of a very very challenging agent, and then knew it wasn't for me, and went searching for other opportunities. And I stumbled upon a job in creative affairs at MGM. Went in for the interview, made it past the first two rounds. Then I got in front of the SVP who was hiring, and he looked at me and he said, "I'm not going to hire you because you're too artistic." He said,
Did
"You
he
need."
hear you singing in the mailroom?
He didn't hear me singing it, but guess what? It was kind of like our connection. He said, "My mom's an opera singer." He said, "The first couple gigs that I had in Hollywood, I walked away from because I wasn't a fit because of my artistic brain." And he said, "So this is what I'm going to do for you. Hold on." He picked up the phone, he made a phone call, and an hour later, I was on the set of Kevin Hart's Soul Plane as a PA.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was an office PA on Soul Plane, and then it's kind of like that story of this begat this, begat this, begat this. And so I went from the set of Soul Plane to working at Telepictures as an associate producer on a big comedic kind of talk game show called Steve Harvey's Big Time. And then from there, working at Telepictures, they really liked what I was doing as an audience guy and producing the audience. And then from there, I was an audience producer at the Ellen DeGeneres Show. Having the opportunity and the access that I had there allowed me to really begin to start to fine tune the direction that I wanted to go. And that I knew I wanted to produce. I knew I wanted to be a part of kind of putting together what made the story pop for
Mhm.
the people in the unscripted space,
Yep.
and it was MTV. So I started the journey to figure out my way to MTV.
And so how'd you get that first job in MTV?
At Ellen, as you may or may not know,
Mhm.
especially season one, two, and three, it was the hottest ticket in town.
Yep.
And every exec, every star, every agent wanted to have access to those tickets, especially those VIP seats. And I was the keeper of the the keys to the kingdom.
There
And
you
so
go, right?
yeah, and so just parlayed the access to working my way through with execs at Viacom and then getting introductions
Right.
to the showrunners. And before you know it, I was sitting in front of them and pitching them on why I needed to be a baby producer on that show.
You got to advocate for yourself, right? You got to use the tools available to you. Here you are, you control the tickets or VIP seats, whatever, meeting people. You could have been quiet and no one could read your mind, but instead you're like, "Hey, I want in," right?
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be your own advocate out here. The funny thing is, you learn very early, even with agents and lawyers or teams, as we call them, you still have to be out there letting everyone know what you bring to the table.
Hmm.
Otherwise, nothing gets done. So for me, that was just really always positioning myself as a person who could really bring joy and could kind of turn a frown upside down. And I utilized that skill set. And actually, my vacuum cleaner salesman skill set, that's another story that we can get into, to kind of close the deal in every room that I was in very early. And even though I was very green and there was lots of stuff that I lacked,
Hmm.
but I made up for it in the place that was really important. And that was being able to produce people, being able to get people to open up and tell their most, I guess, authentic story for whatever show that I was on.
I love to hear these stories about how you got your start in the industry. So you're at MTV. Maybe just summarize some of the things you did at MTV. I know you have a long resume there and different shows you worked on and stuff. Because I really want to get to where you are at PRAYZN. So tell us about the MTV experience.
Man, the MTV experience, I really feel like that's where I grew. And as a producer, you took something from an idea all the way through delivery. And it was also where I learned that I was uniquely called to be a pop culture creator,
Hmm.
music driven,
Hmm.
understanding the integration of product and celebrity, and it just really shaped that unscripted kind of story that began my career.
Okay. So very interesting background. Clearly you learned a lot about storytelling and the narrative and production and all those other things at MTV. How did you come up with the idea for PRAYZN? So you introduced it as a faith-based community app in sort of music experience. Let's start with that, and then I want to kind of get into this market opportunity. So I said I've been doing a little bit of research about this segment of the industry and really the growth opportunity here. So tell us the PRAYZN story.
Praisen began from what was missing. There
Hmm.
was a complete void of programming that spoke to a generation of believers and seekers that wanted entertainment that matched who they authentically were. I
Hmm.
think, growing up as an 80s kid, everything was segmented. Church was separate from your Monday through Saturday. And now we're in a world, social media has completely disrupted everything.
Hmm.
And we're in a world where your identity is a 360 thing that you live.
Hmm.
So it's not about being in culture or out of culture.
Hmm.
They're connected and in the middle of everything socially. So,
Okay, so let me stop you there because I think that's really an interesting point. And people know, I wrote a white paper around community, and I
uh,
think it's a very important lesson for the industry. One, quite frankly, that I think is the path towards greater profitability, towards greater engagement, towards lower cost of view acquisition, all those wonderful things. But I still feel like the industry hasn't quite learned that lesson. They're still thinking too linearly, produce content, distribute it, the battle between streaming and broadcast and cable, right, which is all kind of blurred together now. And then automatically on the other side, the consumer will either subscribe or suffer through advertising or whatever. But there's a 3D, there's a third dimension here, which is this bubble of community that you can wrap them in. And I think MTV was probably an early pioneer in understanding that, right? That sort
yes.
of like fourth wall, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah, it's the lifestyle aspect of it.
Hmm.
It's the Dallas Cowboys of it. It's the Disney of it,
Hmm.
and that's what's missing. And I think we're in a blockbuster moment,
Hmm.
and so to make sure that that doesn't happen, Praisen was born. That's why we're here.
It's
It's
pervasive, I think, is the point you're trying to say. It's not like meet up TV or it's not like you turn a show on or off. It's something that you can engage with 24/7. Is that fair to say? Is that
Yeah,
the
it's
goal at
something
least?
with 24/7. Yeah.
Let's talk about the praise and strategy. You got a beautiful website. I know you're working on the app and all the other things. How is this going to evolve?
We are locking this thing in phases. So phase
Hmm.
one, we're going to drop a fast channel that's going to be all music videos, all,
Okay.
and we're giving this our audience something that they've never had. You got to scour for great Christian pop music content, and when I say Christian pop music, I'm talking about pop, Christian
Hmm.
pop, Christian hip hop, Christian rhythm and praise, Christian pop rock, and we're going to have it all in one place.
Okay.
On a programmatic channel, a programmatic fast channel, and also in phase one, we're
Okay.
going to have lots of unscripted music docs and behind the scenes content, as well as really fun stylized music video shows as
Hmm.
well. And then in phase two, we'll begin to start to slowly drip in original premium content.
Hmm.
So think of all the unscripted fun stuff that everybody loves: reality, game, the lifestyle verticals, like cooking,
Dating maybe?
travel. Say that again.
Dating maybe?
I think a little dating as well.
All
We
right. Okay. All right. You
really,
heard it here
yeah, and
first.
we have a really great show in development right now that I think is going to be that water cooler moment, as you would say, for our brand. It's going to be a signature series. It's going to be loud and crazy, and it is in the dating space. We're missing an opportunity to address what's happening in the life stages of a 20-something, what's happening in the life stages of a high schooler, a high schooler that's just figuring out the world. Every 2 to 3 years, this changes and there's music for it. And it's Christian pop music.
Hmm.
It's not programmed on K-Love and Air One. And I love those guys, but it's not. And so we're bringing that to this audience, and we're going to do it in a loud, bold, unapologetic way. And we're doing it with lots of love and to become the soundtrack of their lives that they can then share, engage, and then call their own.
I
Um,
love that. So the soundtrack relies, because I think you're right. Like whether you liked horror movies or opera, content, whatever, there's a tendency to kind of like snack on it, right? You go,
yes.
and so for faith-based music, it might be, praise and worship or something on Sunday, and then you're doing something else, the other 6 days of the week, or whatever. So your goal is to get this community to be all in, like all the time.
Yes, yeah, and embrace the authentic, all in nature of who they are right now. We
Okay.
say it's funny that you say, listening to the worship on Sundays. We say, listening to Tay Tay, Beyonce, and Drake and Bad Bunny on Saturdays, and then on Sundays they're in listening to Elevation Worship and Maverick City Music. And praising in church or streaming online. And we that's our audience, and we're there for
Right.
them, and we're doing it in a way that's just, like I said, an unapologetically fresh perspective
Okay.
that is not grandma stuff. You
Yeah, and
know,
I think that's the key thing. And in the research I did, I think this was a recurring theme is that, faith-based content can come across as preachy, cheesy even, boomerish, and not speak to that younger demographic where it really has to be authentic. It has to resonate with them. High production values, good quality, where I don't know, speak to that. Like, how important is that as part of your strategy?
I feel like it's so cliche, aspiring to meet them where they are. That's what everybody says. So but it's more than that. It's understanding that the way the world used to work no longer works. The numbers are ridiculous of how many younger millennials and Gen Zers don't aren't attending church. Funny enough, they still have a spiritual life. A lot of
Mhm.
them are streaming. A lot of them are engaging on TikTok and on Instagram, but there's no real home or hub for them to call
Mhm.
their own. And it's delivering it in a way that they love, which is high quality, a story that actually resonates and that's authentic to a daily life, that is unfiltered, that is in a way kind of unpolished in a
Mhm.
keeping it real kind of way.
Yep.
Because, like you said, so much of faith-driven content is preachy,
Mhm.
or I would say feels like meat to
Mhm.
the kids. We're the milk and cookies. Like
Okay.
that's what PRAYZN is. PRAYZN is milk and cookies. PRAYZN is here for everyone to have an opportunity to grow and get to know who they are as
Mhm.
a person of faith, and to also have that entertainment that they can share, that they can be proud of. So
Yep.
many, I remember, the stuff we did in church camp, we didn't want to do in school.
Mhm.
We didn't want to share with our friends. And, growing up in the 80s. And I think now we have this crazy opportunity because the faith-driven community, or I should say, the Christian kids are
Mhm.
killing it on TikTok. They're
Yep.
killing it. The musical messengers out there
Mhm.
delivering across the genres that typically would be top 40.
Yep.
The music is amazing and it's industry competitive. And so we're going to do that same thing in how we curate, and also
Okay.
how we create original programming.
So it's interesting, and this ties into something we talked a little bit offline in terms of the community and how it can evolve. In my research, the companies that are doing a good job at tapping, fully engaging their viewers, regardless of the demographic, they're obviously doing a big part of social, maybe
Mhm.
off social, the existing social, networks, but also they're, on board, their own social app. Even things like merchandising, like selling a t-shirt, right? People love that. You've got yours right there. Dating is another way to engage people. Live events, right? So talk about that. Like, how do you expand that core, phase one and two to something that is more pervasive to other parts of their lives?
What I'm so excited about with PRAYZN is that we're reaching our audience on an identity level. And I think when you reach people on an identity level, you have a crazy opportunity to build an ecosystem of products and services that can really cater to the lifestyle that reiterates who you are, who the brand
Mhm.
is. I talked a little earlier about the Disney of it all, the NFL of it all. People eat, sleep,
Mhm.
and breathe those brands.
Mhm.
And I think and that's what's missing in the faith-driven community. There's nothing that is, and I don't want to say cool, but there's nothing that really resonates with our audience. And
Mhm.
and I think so, when we talk about community, it's almost like we're going analog. And when
Mhm.
I say analog, I mean analog in a digital sense, the AOL communities, MySpace, the MySpaciness of it all, where
Okay.
you really, from sun up to sundown, those brands were a part of your life, whether you were
Mhm.
talking about it in school, whether it was something that you were repping, as far as merchandise, whether it was a real life, in real life experience that you were having, meeting your friends at a local coffee shop or at a record store or something like that.
I was going to go there. It sounds like the vibe that you're trying to create is like that environment where you want to go back to vinyl, right? Because you love the music. You're
Yes.
such a aficionado of the music. You're like, yeah, I want to go. I want to get this on vinyl.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and I would love for our community to celebrate the stuff that we're curating in the same way that they do, with an Adele drop or with a
Yep,
Beyonce drop with the vinyl stuff. Lauren Daigle and Lecrae and Holland and Torrin Wells deserve that kind of stuff too. And
that's
that's
really
what
cool.
Praisen is going to bring to you.
That's great. So where are you as a corporate entity? I know it's early. Are you looking for investment?
Yes.
To maybe just the highlights on the team. Like, where are you right now?
Yeah, so I am a proud, unapologetic party of one that's an accordion.
Okay.
So I'm a full-time founder right now.
Yep.
We are pre-seed, so we've just started the journey of raising capital, and I have an incredible team of advisors and strategic creative partners that are
Mhm.
with me in the trenches.
Yep.
They were with me in the trenches through developing the initial strategy and the branding, and of course, because I come from the creative community, I'm blessed to have a really powerful group of spitballers that help me refine kind of the original slate that we're going to launch. Because we're doing something a little different.
Yep.
Typically with the OTT community, you license a library, you pick your colors of your branding, you get a Netflix template, and you go out there and you start pushing the story. We are coming out the gate,
Yep.
kind of challenging the status quo of how these things go, because I know that this next stage, this next phase of OTT driven platforms and publishers are going to have to do something different. No
Yep.
one wants to see the same thing that they can get at three or four different platforms, or as I say, the same Christmas movies everywhere.
That's awesome. And people can see your profile of the team members up on the website. Well, Ren, this is really exciting. I think this is definitely a growth industry. I forgot to mention Wonder Project. There's a bunch of companies out there that are targeting the faith and Christian market. Very good sound business sense. It sounds like you have a fantastic strategy too to sort of kind of envelop that community and all the different touch points that make it engaging and interesting. I can't let you leave though until I ask you a personal hobby or an interest or something about yourself that you can share with our audience.
Well, I was excited to get this question because, as you know, I am definitely a fan and a part of this community. But I am a voracious vegetizer. So,
Okay.
so basically, I love figuring out ways to create plant-based versions of my favorite comfort foods.
Oh, that's a real term, vegetizer? I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, so vegetizing foods that are typically traditionally comfort meat eating type things,
Yep.
that's where I'm at. And right now, I think I'm really close to perfecting the rib, and I'm calling it a ribbits.
Okay, so without giving away any trade secrets, like what kind of vegetables do you use to recreate that? Can you
Yeah,
share or
so well, yeah, it's a lot of green vegetables. Kale and broccoli are the two main, and then of course we have a little help from some jackfruit, and then some plant-based science that goes in there too. I'll say
okay.
that without giving any brands,
Sure, sure, sure. No, that's cool. Wow, that's interesting. So, I mean, it's a little bit of science and creativity and just dietary preferences, right?
Yeah, and just and a lot of taste testing of of friends and family
That's the
who
fun part. That is the
yeah,
fun
yeah,
part. Well, listen, Ren, I really enjoyed this conversation. I think you're definitely onto something. It's a large and growing community. I think you have a great vision. We'll be keeping track of PRAYZN. That's PRAYZN.com. So people want to check it out. And yeah, thanks for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And then also too, if anyone wants to get an idea of who we are and what the sound is and what's going to really drive us at our core, go to praisen.com/vibes. And there's a playlist there that really does speak to where we're growing and going. And will really, I think, kind of give you an understanding of what's about to happen.
Yeah, it's all about the vibes, isn't it? Well, listen, thanks again, Ren Young, the founder of PRAYZN. I'm Brian Mahoney, the CEO of Trend Research and the president of the OTT Executive Committee. On behalf of OTT Executive Podcast, thanks for joining us, and everybody have a great day.